Hi, I'm Alexander, and today I'm going to highlight 5 pentatonic mistakes to avoid whilst you're playing or you're practicing your pentatonic scales, how you can avoid these mistakes, and if you are making these mistakes, then how you can fix them as well. In this example, I'm going to use the A minor pentatonic scale as well, so I see this happening a lot amongst beginners and also players who are learning and who already know this scale and are still making these mistakes with it as well. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight these mistakes, and hopefully you'll be able to recognize one or two of them as I go through this video as well. So I'm not saying you are making these mistakes, but if you are, you'll be able to recognize them, and I'm going to give you tips on how you can fix them or remedy them, and how so not to make these mistakes whilst you're practicing the scale. Okay, so I'm going to highlight the first mistake, which is going too fast. So say you just learn the scale and you become more and more confident with it, and then you just become ambitious to try and play it as fast as you possibly can. But if you do this, here's what might happen if you attempt that. Okay, so I'm going to play an example of what I commonly see and what it might sound like if you do it too. So here we go. So what that creates is sloppy and unmusical vibe towards your playing, and which is not beneficial. It's impractical towards any real life playing situation, especially when you're practicing as well, because the more you do that, the less fluent and controlled you're going to become with it. So what you want to do instead is slow and steady and controlled movements as you're going through the scale. For that, I recommend either using a metronome for it, or just going at a speed which is more comfortable for you, or even just at a speed even better if you learn to play at a slower speed than what you're used to. I'm going to show you what that sounds like by going slow as well. So I'm going to start off as just a controlled sort of slower speed while going through a scale, and I'll show you what that might sound like. So with this, we might be going. See, every note I played there could be heard, it could be clear, and I move through it still slowly, more controlled and confidently as well. So what you want to do when you're doing that as well, it's going to be helping you with your technique and your note fluency as well whilst playing through the scale, and it'll help you memorize it and become much more familiar with it too. And once you're comfortable with playing at that speed, try at a more moderate tempo, again using a metronome, or try chopping and changing between notes of the scale to create an exercise like so. So for example, I could be going from the 6th string from the 5th fret, and this time I'm going to be playing in a group of 6. So what I'd be doing is I'd be going, again in a moderate tempo this time, I'll be going 5, 8, and then 5, 7, 5, 7, and then going down to the A, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7. Skip down to the string you just played and play it another group of 6. Another group of 6. String below. Now going back down, we're going to do the opposite. Previous string. Previous string. Previous string. That's just one example of how you can do that. Alright, so I'll highlight the second mistake, which is fingering or using the wrong fingers. So when you're playing through a scale, it's really important that you actually know which fingers to allocate and use for each note and fret of the scale. And that's going to help you move more fluidly throughout playing it as well, making things so much easier. Now, with this, I'm not saying there's any right or wrong particularly written in stone. But if you do try and use either the wrong fingers, or even worse, just one finger like this, that's going to be really detrimental towards your progress as well, and playing whilst using the scale, and it's also very counterproductive and an unpractical thing to do. Now let me just show you an example of how you would allocate each of your fingers towards the scale as well. So for example, if you're playing, say, changing between frets, changing between strings, what you commonly want to do is allocate, for example, I'm starting on the 5th fret of the 6th string. I'm using my first finger for that very fret, and when I'm going up to the 8th fret, I'll actually want to use the finger that's furthest to that, that's closest, sorry, to that fret. And also when I'm playing the 5th fret again on the next string, first finger again. And when I'm going to the 7th fret this time, I'm actually using the 3rd finger, because that is the finger that's closest to the 7th as well, again. So 5, 7, 5, 7, that's first finger, 7th fret, that's 3rd finger, and then when going to 5 and 8, I'm using my 8th, sorry, not 8th, that's the 8th fret, 5, 8, that's my 4th finger. You can also use, there'd be nothing wrong with using your 3rd either, but it just completely depends on your preference. But some people actually do prefer to use it like that, but you've also got to think of the practicality of playing that scale as well at the same time. That'll be very useful if, for example, performing a bend after that. That'll be very good as well. So again, still allocating my first finger to the 5th, and then the 8, and then finally on the 1st string, 5 and 8 again. Okay, let's move on to the 3rd point, which is changing between notes. So whilst changing between these notes, it's important to try and create a steady and controlled passage between these frets and strings, and to avoid a mistake, which is, say, playing a note and then stopping, and then playing the notes of the next one, and then stopping again before playing the next note, or taking your finger off too early before you hit the next fret or note, or because what this will do, it will compromise your playing fluidity, and it'll make your notes also sound sloppy again. So it's important that you also follow the point I made before about taking it slow to begin with, because this will help develop your technique and plus your execution between each note of a scale, and it'll also take you further towards being able to play each note cleaner and far more smoothly throughout the scale as well. So if I was playing this slowly again, just going back from the point I made before, I'll work on passing between each note, and make sure each one just comes out as smooth and as clean as I possibly can, and avoid any gaps in between. So go back down, same thing again. So that's point number 3. Let's just move on to point number 4 now, which is, it's quite an important one actually, so one thing learning it, but it's the point number 4 is not using it. So again, it is one thing just to learn the scale, but unless you are actually going to use the scale in a practical or musical context, it's not going to make any sense to you to know that scale at all. So you might be thinking, as soon as you learn the scale, maybe, okay, I've learned the scale, but now what? Well, for that, I recommend learning some handy licks, or also using the scale to create new melodies, lines, and licks too. And also as a guideline to practice your techniques like bending, for example, or hammer-ons, pull-offs, and licks such as this one, which is a bend, and then something like this as well. Also, another great and useful way is to play along with a backing track, and this will help you to understand how the scale works in a soloing and improvisational context too, and it's going to help you use the full extent of how the scale will benefit you and deepen your musical and technical knowledge as well. And you can find plenty of these online as well on YouTube, as well, like countless in just countless sources as well. And if you're going to be using, say, the A minor pentatonic scale, you may want to go onto YouTube and just search, you know, A minor pentatonic backing track, and it'll help you just to utilize and use what you already know with the scale and help deepen your knowledge with it as well. Okay, let's go into the fifth and final tip I have for you, and this may sound a little bit obvious, but it is note fluency. So it's really important that not only are you using the scale or practicing it, but also making sure that you're actually using and hitting the right notes too. And I've seen this happen before with beginners where they'll just either play the total wrong frets all the way up the scale, or use poor technique, and make every single note sound muffled. So an example of this might be, the fingering part of it, like I mentioned before as well, and I'll say to them, okay, do you know your A minor pentatonic scale? They say yes, I've okay, and this happens. Or even worse, like maybe, I mean, that one there is a little bit of an easy mistake to make, so the 5-7 instead of the 5-8, but to counteract this as well, like the best way to assure that you memorize it is by its shape rather than by its frets or numbers. Similarly to how you memorize chord shapes as well, and this will also give you a better chance to make sure that you're actually hitting the right notes each and every time. So as soon as you learn that shape as well, there's almost no chance that you'll be hitting the wrong notes in the future. And another tip is to play the scale, and if you've noticed any muffled notes, then you go back and you see why it didn't come out quite the way it did, or if you need to reconsider any of your finger positionings or fret hand movements as well. So for example, I'm going to play the scale and I'm going to I'll show an example where there might be a few muffled notes which didn't come out right in it. So you can notice a few there. So what you want to do there, again, as I mentioned before, you want to go back and isolate where that went wrong. Okay, so is more along when I was hitting the third string as well. So what I want to do is maybe just apply maybe a little bit more pressure to that fret. Again, second string as well. And working that until it's remedied as well. So maybe try going down the scale and see how cleanly that comes out that time, and then practice until you've basically got every note sounding clearer and fluent as well. So guys, I hope that's helped you today. And if you've got any questions, I've been Matt Alexander. I've going to have plenty more videos like this on my YouTube channel quite regularly as well. I'm going to be covering other areas as well, and plus if you have any questions, any suggestions for videos in the future, please do not hesitate to message me or leave a comment below, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.